Tonight, President Trump makes the case for why he should get your vote in 2020. A look at the launch of his re-election campaign. Plus, tensions with Iran are on the rise. At the same time, the Defense Department is running without a confirmed leader. The man who's stepping in for the time being. And the unbelievable story of forgiveness that inspired a film documenting the events of the Charleston church shooting. All that and more tonight on Faith Nation.
President Trump breaking fundraising records in his re-election bid. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. Well, President Trump is officially running for re-election, and he's confident he'll win.
That confidence boosted in part today because of record-setting campaign contributions after his re-election announcement down in Florida. CBN News White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us with details. Ben?
Well, John and Jenna, the president's re-election campaign says it raked in nearly $25 million in one day. News of big fundraising came as the president held another roundtable discussion and a fundraising luncheon in the Sunshine State before heading back to the White House. The president may trail top Democrats in the Florida polls, but after last night's speech, he's beating them at the bank.
I stand before you
in front of a full house
to officially launch
and in a key battleground state
my campaign for a second term as President of the United States.
President Trump officially kicked off his re-election campaign.
Keep America great.
New campaign slogan, but with a similar message.
So the wall is moving along. It's moving along rapidly. It's beautiful. I changed the design. It's stronger, bigger, better, and cheaper.
What's not cheap is Trump's supporters. The GOP reports the president raised a record-breaking $24.8 million in less than 24 hours from his re-election. That's more money than any Democrat has raised in the first quarter of 2019. Republican voters point to the strong economy, immigration, and even foreign policy for reasons to back Trump. In Orlando, the president doubled down on his close relationship with Israel.
We recognized the true capital of Israel and opened the American embassy in Jerusalem. And we recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights.
New polls show Democratic candidates hold a lead in Florida, a state Trump barely won in 2016.
No matter what label they use, a vote for any Democrat in 2020 is a vote for the rise of radical socialism and the destruction of the American dream.
Now we are hearing that President Trump plans to live tweet during the first Democratic debates next week. The top 20 candidates will face off on June 26th and 27th. Ben Kennedy, CBN News, Washington.
All right, thank you, Ben. Well, Democrats on the Hill are continuing with multiple investigations into the president, including looking into possible obstruction of justice in the Russia investigation. Former White House Communications Director Hope Hicks was on Capitol Hill today, testifying in a closed-door session with the House Judiciary Committee. This was the first time these lawmakers heard from someone in the president's inner circle since the special counsel report was released. Hicks reportedly would not answer questions about her work in the White House.
Well, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez isn't backing down from comparing border detention centers to concentration camps, a comment gaining criticism from her counterparts on Capitol Hill. Today, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy demanding an apology from the freshman congresswoman.
I think Congresswoman AOC needs to apologize not only to the nation but to the world, and to take something that happened in history where millions of Jews have died and equate it to somewhere that's happening on the border. She owes this nation an apology.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi responded today saying Democrats should try to be careful with their words in today's politically charged atmosphere.
And joining us now are Tom Bevan of Real Clear Politics and David Brody, CBN's chief political analyst. Both of you, thank you for being here. Tom, to you first. President Trump raising some $25 million just within less than 24 hours of announcing his re-election campaign. Talk about the significance of that.
Well, I mean, the thing about Trump is, and you saw this, when's the last time we saw people stand outside for 36 hours in the rain for a political rally? I mean, his supporters are fired up, and they showed that not only by showing up to his events, but donating to his campaign. He's going to have plenty of money to run this campaign, unlike he did in 2016. He's also going to have the other thing that the Trump campaign is doing a much better job of this time around is building out the campaign infrastructure, targeting those voters, getting their data, finding them, and getting them turned out to vote in 16 months from now. So the irony of President Trump is he also fires up the Democrats in an unprecedented way. And so I think we are in the Democrat, whoever the nominee is going to be, despite a long, drawn-out primary campaign, is going to have plenty of money. So it is going to be a battle royale for 2020.
David, talking about the fired-up crowds, people waiting as many as 40 hours, and his record-setting haul, he still lags behind in the polls. So is there a disconnect in what we're seeing in reality?
I don't believe any of the polls at this point. I really don't, and nor should anybody out there. And here's why. Look, there was a new Suffolk poll today that showed President Trump beating the Democrat opponent by 11 points, any Democrat opponent. And of course, we know the poll the other day, one of the national polls showed Trump losing to everyone. So look, I think polls are really overblown at this point. And what you want to be careful also is watch out for the state polls, because the national polls typically are weighted for education, though a lot of them in 2016 weren't. But this time around, a lot of the state polls will not be weighted, or at least at this point, they're not weighted for education. You know, the non-college white voter who is big for Trump. So those state polls, if they're not accurate, that's clearly a problem.
Now, last night the crowd started chanting, "Lock her up, lock her up." It was like a flashback to 2016. Is this kind of what we're going to see in 2020?
I think it's at the margins. I think it's political eye candy. That's all it is. I mean, you know, the media likes to have fun with it, but that's not what this is about at all. I think President Trump laid it out pretty clear. He laid it out pretty clear for Donald Trump, that is. In other words, it was helter-skelter, was like he's like a human Etch-a-Sketch, but eventually it kind of comes together. And look, he had a lot of nationalism-type roots in that speech. There was no doubt about it. But ultimately, he likes to brand people. So he'll brand the Democrat, he brands himself, and he was really good at it last night.
What did we learn from his campaign kickoff as far as how he plans to frame this election and take on any one of his Democratic challengers?
Well, we learned that it is going to be sort of a doubling down on the 2016 strategy, right? You know, Trump is the ultimate performer. And as people say when they go to a concert, you know, people go there to hear the hits. And that's what he played last night, right? Not the new music. He didn't offer any new proposals. This is not about necessarily, at least at this point, not about reaching out to broadening the base and trying to get, he's doing what Obama did actually in 2012, which is to double down and squeeze every last vote out of your base, especially in the states that matter. And we'll see whether that works or not. But clearly that's their strategy. And I agree with David. He's going to, depending on who the Democrats nominate, he is going to brand that candidate and contrast himself with that Democrat on immigration for sure, you know, healthcare policy, national security, whatever the situation may be. And he's going to hope that that's going to be enough to win the day.
And a quick addendum to that. Don't forget the branding that he did. First it was Make America Great Again in 2016. Now it's Keep America Great. So the emphasis, therefore, is he's already made America Great Again, and now it's to keep America great in 2020. It's basically saying, I've already delivered for you, and now we got to keep it going.
Shifting gears here, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's in some hot water right now. People are demanding she apologize for comments she made comparing detention centers down on the southern border to concentration camps in Nazi Germany. You know, Tom, you were tweeting about this today, and that it reminds you of someone else that's pretty well known.
Well, you played Kevin McCarthy basically saying that she needs to apologize. And she doubled down and said, look, I will never apologize. And I had said, that sounds an awful lot like our current president. That seems to be the case these days. You know, nobody apologizes for anything anymore. But I do think, look, this is a classic case of where the Democrats, I was with Nancy Pelosi at this breakfast this morning, and she wanted to talk about health care. She wanted to talk about all the bills they'd passed, her For the People agenda that Democrats are pushing through the House. All she got were questions, and the headlines that came out of that breakfast were about impeachment and about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her language that she continues to find herself in hot water for. And the Democrats spent all day on Twitter and progressives debating the semantic differences between concentration camps and death camps, extermination camps. It's not a good look. And again, it's going to contrast with President Trump. Whether you like his policies, don't like his policies, he's been pulling every lever that he can to try and solve the problem, and Democrats are not offering any solutions to what's going on at the border. And this is just another example where I think they're going to find themselves on the wrong side of this if they keep it up.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to have to leave it right there. Tom, David, thank you guys so much for this conversation.
Thank you.
Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan is out. Coming up, the man tapped to fill his role. Well, on the same day as the first Democratic debate, President Trump will address thousands of conservative Christians. Next Wednesday, he'll take the stage at the Faith and Freedom Coalition's Road to Majority. A senior White House official tells CBN News President Trump will speak at the conference in Washington for about an hour, marking the president's sixth time speaking to the influential crowd of evangelicals. The last time he addressed this crowd was back in 2017. And joining us now is Ralph Reed, chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition. Ralph, good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Ralph, you've known the president since before he was president, and he's spoken to your group many times. Why specifically is he speaking this time around to them?
Well, I think there's a tremendous affinity between the faith community and this president. I think it's something that you have to give him enormous credit for. I'm not sure exactly where it comes from, to be perfectly honest with you, but from the moment I first got to know him, which was about 9 years ago, he's been focused like a laser beam on the faith vote. And he's on the issues that are a priority to them. He's made promises and he's kept those promises. He's protected the sanctity of innocent human life. He's signed legislation making it possible for states to defund Planned Parenthood under their Medicaid programs. He's restored the Mexico City policy and strengthened it. When it comes to religious freedom, he's ended enforcement of the Johnson Amendment. He's ended the Obamacare conscience mandates that trampled on the conscience rights of millions of people of faith, including Little Sisters of the Poor, when it came to providing medical services that violated their faith and assaulted their conscience. He's nominated stellar conservatives like Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court, and he's been pro-Israel. So, you know, I'm not surprised that he's coming and that he does this well among these voters.
I want to break in real quick, Ralph, and ask you about the timing of the speech, which, of course, coincides with the first Democratic debate. How much of that was a consideration?
Well, I can't speak for the White House, but it wasn't a consideration for us. I mean, our conference was scheduled over a year ago, and we didn't know when the Democrats were going to debate. I mean, I think it could be serendipitous, and it could be that the president will utilize this opportunity, whether he does so deliberately or it just happens. I think it's going to draw a pretty clear contrast when you look at the message that he's going to deliver to faith and freedom next Wednesday morning, and you look at the message that the Democrats are going to be delivering, which is abortion on demand through the 9th month of pregnancy, paid for with your tax dollars, including, by the way, allowing, permitting, and encouraging abortion even moments before a child is about to be born, when they can survive outside the womb.
Yeah. Well, Ralph, we have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us, and good luck with the conference.
Thanks so much. We're looking forward to it. It's sold out, and there are going to be thousands and thousands of people there.
All right. Thanks, Ralph.
Thanks, Ralph. Well, growing security concerns tonight as the strain between Iran and America deepens, all the while the U.S. doesn't have a permanent Secretary of Defense.
CBN News national security correspondent Eric Phillips is here now with more. Eric, Acting Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan is stepping down tonight. You have more details on the man set to take his place.
Well, that's right, John. Lots going on at the Pentagon this week, Mark Esper was the Secretary of the Army before being named Acting Secretary of Defense yesterday. Now, he graduated from West Point in 1986 and served in the Army and the Army Reserve and National Guard for more than 2 decades. Now, Esper went on to the Conservative Heritage Foundation, as well as a series of jobs on Capitol Hill and in the Pentagon, before ending up at Raytheon, a major military contractor. The 56-year-old became Secretary of the Army back in 2017. And here's an interesting fact for you. If Esper tries to take over permanently as Secretary of Defense, he will have to step down during his confirmation process, and that would mean a third acting defense secretary this year alone.
And Eric, this is all happening as the president announced he's sending 1,000 more troops to the Middle East.
Yeah, that's right. And today, with that in mind, the subcommittee of the House Foreign Affairs Committee met to discuss the Iran policy. Members said there seems to be a disconnect between both Iran and the U.S., saying they don't want war and what's physically happening on both sides. They're concerned the president might try to circumvent Congress in starting a war with Iran. And that's a notion that the U.S. Special Representative for Iran rebukes.
We received credible threat reporting in late April and early May that Iran was plotting imminent attacks against American interests in multiple theaters. We enhanced our force posture in a defensive mode so that we could protect ourselves if attacked. That's it. That's as far as we've taken this, and no farther.
Brian Hook said an increased show of force will have just the effect of deterring military conflict in that region, not encouraging it.
All right, Eric, thanks so much, and we'll be right back.
4 years ago this week, a gunman entered a Charleston, South Carolina church and killed 9 people at a Bible study.
And on this day 4 years ago, the victim's family forgave the shooter. Ephraim Graham has the story.
Didn't think much about it for a minute, and then I said, let me call Cynthia. And I called her cell phone, and there was no answer.
These are the voices.
Someone told me, hey, Chris, your mom got shot.
The families.
And she said, who is you? I said, I'm the daughter. She said, I'm sorry, baby, your mama's gone.
Of those known to many as the Charleston 9, all gunned down at a Bible study in the basement of Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, South Carolina, June 17th, 2015. Their lives in that day now being remembered on the big screen in the film Emmanuel.
It sounded like a transformer blew. And then when we all opened our eyes, I was the first one. I said, oh my God, he have a gun. I said, he's shooting the place. And I said, get on the floor. And Reverend Pinckney was the first one, got shot. And then the shots came so regular.
Reverend Daniel Simmons Sr. was the second to be shot. Rose Simmons is his daughter.
What's this film mean to you?
Wow, you know, it is a film that needs to be told. It really chronicles the lives of the family members and survivors, and it shows the impact of that night.
A white man who wanted to start a race war came to a very historic African-American church to kill black people, and that is what happened in our city.
The impact of that night and what followed is why Hollywood stars Mariska Hargitay, Viola Davis, and NBA star Steph Curry all signed on as the film's producers.
It's confusing at times in terms of why, some people might question, why would God let something like this happen? When I go through those type of seasons in my life, it's finding, that reassurance that He will never forsake me in terms of, anything that I go through. It's just preparing me for something to come.
This one was really seared through me, and I'll tell you why. As a Christian woman, as a lover of God and Christ, and as a woman of color and a South Carolina native, I was floored by how this man, Dylan Roof, walked into the church during Bible study and how they welcomed him in. It's those kind of details. But as much as I know about history, and as much as I'm not surprised by acts of hatred and racism and violence, that one still shocked me.
What also shocked many? The families of the fallen publicly forgave the shooter.
I would never talk to her ever again. I would never be able to hold her again. But I forgive you.
It came barely 48 hours after the murders.
I remember when I got the call, my mind completely skyrocketed, I would say. That's how fast I moved to thinking about my father. My thoughts were more about how he's entering heaven. I thought less about how he left this world and more about his triumphant entry into glory. And that was only through the power of the Holy Spirit. It wasn't something that I intended to do. It came upon me. And I believe that that's where my peace was established throughout the whole incident.
What do you want us to know about your dad?
Wow. I love that question. I love it when people ask me that. I think he had to become his own hero. And I believe that's how he lived his life. He nicknamed himself Super Simmons. And I think in order to do that, you have to have this presence about who you are. And I believe he always knew who he was and what he wanted to do and achieve. And everything that he set out to do, he did it.
An act that he imagined would incite fear and recrimination, violence and suspicion. An act that he presumed would deepen divisions that trace back to our nation's original sin. Oh, but God works in mysterious ways.
Well, the White House and members of Congress are joining with people across the country in recognition of Juneteenth.
That is right. The holiday commemorates this day back in 1865 when slaves in Texas finally gained their freedom after the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation a full 2 years earlier. The day is both one of celebration and reflection. As former Congressional Black Caucus leader Elijah Cummings wrote on Twitter today, Juneteenth is a reminder that while our nation has made tremendous progress, we must continue to work to ensure freedom, equality, and justice for all. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation.
Have a great evening.